Welcome. Those who don't know, I am Matthew Townend. I am Managing Director of Cavell and was the founder of the business. I worked out recently that I haven't had a proper job for 20 years, so nobody's paid me for 20 years, which is a bad thing, I think. But we've been running Cavell, as you know, really for about 15 years. Dom's been by my side for 13 years of that growing this business, so he's been crucial to that growth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the learnings we've had over the last 10 years and where we're seeing the market going in the future. So this is 10 years ago. Anybody in the room put their hand up? Were there? Anybody was there? Yay, yeah, some of my old friends who've been in this industry with me and by my side for the last 10 years. We decided that we'd hire a room, a bit like today, for 75 people and 135 turned up. There's a common theme there. And, it's quite interesting who was sponsoring it, where are they now? So, our main sponsors kindly were, and I think Steve Harris, wherever he is, always used to sponsor my drinks. But he was our drinks, not today, no, not with 400 people. Rigby Group won't have that, will they? No, can't get that through the expenses. But, and what was interesting is what we were talking about. So these were the trends in the market. And I thought some of them were quite amusing, really. The new activities from platform vendors and PBX vendors entering the market. Well, I think we've seen in the news in the last few days that maybe some of the PBX vendors are exiting the market. But, that was quite interesting. We were still talking about closing the PSTN in a number of markets, which I guess we still are. But things like we were starting to say that the indirect channel was going to take off, and we've seen that drive a number of your businesses over the last 10 years. I mean, the indirect channel has been the lifeblood of this industry. So it's been kind of interesting seeing how that changed. I guess we're still dealing with some of those issues like the role of mobility, etc. I think it's changed. We're not so much talking about technologies like WebRTC really now. We're talking about go-to-market, how we drive the market. But it was kind of interesting to see what we were talking about. And in line with that, I guess all of our task today, is really to sort of think about what's next. So we've clearly been, through a PBX and Centrix world. We went through kind of a voice-centric cloud world. We've been in this collaboration era in the last few years. And the question for all of us really is kind of where are we going next? And, where do the opportunities lie? So I'm going to try and lay out some of what we're seeing there and what we're thinking. As is fairly traditional, people know we do enterprise research pretty regularly in all the markets that we operate in. And, we are seeing the drive, as we've talked about before, for improving security and improving AI. And I think the question for a lot of us was, what does that mean in terms of product offerings that we can bring to market? But we're also seeing that drive for CX. And when we dig a little bit deeper into some of that, we look at what the businesses are saying to us. Yes, security is a big issue. 77% of enterprises are looking for better CX experiences. They're looking to drive that. But there's a huge concern about fraud and security in the market right now, all across the market. One of the things that we are seeing is sort of a rise when we talk to service providers, again, in a bit of hybrid deployment solutions. So we are starting to see in AI and in cloud, people's talking a bit more about hybrid. So where does the technology lie? So is it just all pure cloud, or is there some hybrid? And that's starting to pop up. And I think we know why. There are some, maybe, I'll be wrong to say, but appears to be madmen in charge of the world economy at the moment. And some people I probably won't get back into the US now, will I? I shouldn't have said that. Be pulled to one side. I didn't say the US, did I? And so we are starting to see some concern from players about the infrastructure and where they should host things and how we do that. It's certainly coming through stronger now. And obviously regulatory and compliance is a big issue. But I was in Australia the last 3 weeks, setting up our office down there and working with a couple of the players are over with us here. And there's still a huge opportunity in the transition to cloud in all services. So we shouldn't forget that. And, we can see a lot of moves from a M&A point of view recently. We're going to hear from Andrew shortly with Gamma buying Starface and others. because of the opportunity in Germany, the perceived opportunity in some of the other markets as well in Europe. But there's still an overall large opportunity in that cloud transition. In terms of what we're seeing from market dynamics and starting to answer the question of what is that next question mark, is I think we first have to start thinking about what are the comms, the IT manager dealing with at the moment? And they're dealing with a group of stakeholders in their business. They're dealing with employees who are demanding better collaboration, better ways of working, better engagement. They're working with customers who are demanding better customer experience from them. And they're also being driven by core business objectives around, cost we saw previously, data-driven decision-making. So people are searching more and more to make the right decisions. So they're getting those kind of drivers coming together. And the way we kind of answered that traditionally is in quite a siloed approach to technology. So this is just one way of mapping that we traditionally did in terms of mapping the technology kind of landscape. But it was quite siloed, and we had point integrations, and we had some data passing between these different things, but it was, traditionally a siloed world. And as we move to these new demands, is that really gonna cut the mustard for the customer? We are starting to see the benefits of AI coming through, but this generally in very specific applications led still. I know we can talk about Microsoft and Copilot going across the board, but really even there, that's not really the way it's working. We're seeing very much AI being delivered within products at a product level. So we're getting innovation within those product silos, and we're not really seeing the benefit across the board. So what we think is going to start to be important is what we're calling the intelligent workplace. And we think that at the center, the business has sort of three main objectives. They want to communicate, they want to collaborate, and they want to drive analysis, and they want to drive better business decisions. And we're now thinking there are like 3 or 4 core platforms around that companies are using at the heart of what they're doing. And they might be productivity platforms, they might be CRM platforms, they might be UCaaS, CCaaS, CX platforms. But no longer are they standalone. They can't afford to stand alone any longer. And they can't stand in isolation of the broader integration layer. They can't stand alone from the vertical applications, from the applications, the specific point solutions. They have to now, to really build this intelligent workplace, they have to integrate. And when we talk about integration, we often forget that the main thing really here is about data. How do we enable data to flow between these solutions? How do we enable, for us really to bring intelligence, we have to have data flowing between those different capabilities. And obviously we have to integrate them, and then we can drive intelligence. But we have to start thinking in that way. And clearly, there is security and compliance now around everything. So, we're having to think about that as a whole layer as well. But we're seeing the barriers, and different businesses of different sizes will have different core platforms to them. So some people, their core intelligent workplace platform might be a CRM platform in their case. Sometimes it might be their UCaaS platform. Sometimes it might be their CX platform. But they have to work as one. And we're starting to see, if you just look at some of the recent M&A, we're starting to see players buy across these platforms and bring them together. So we think more and more you're going to be thinking around this broader picture. And the opportunity there is great, right? So there's huge opportunity now, I think, to break out of some of our silos and to start to sell those broader services. But we have to think about the data and how we're going to integrate them. So you'll hear us talking more about this. We've been putting quite a lot of thought and research into how that plays out over the next year or so. And the challenge is, with what is a complex picture, our job in the industry is to simplify that. So how do we take what appears to be quite a complex challenge and simplify it? And, just to pull on a few of those points that we talked about earlier. So we talked about integrations being crucial. What's interesting in our latest European research is no longer is CRM the main thing that people want to integrate to. Sure, they've been talking about integrating into their productivity suite, into Teams, into those things, but they're now talking about vertical applications. And you're going to see a panel later about vertical solutions, vertical applications. We've got a number of players who are going to come and talk about how they're verticalizing what they're doing. So that's a real change in the last few years. If I'd have put this up 3 years ago, it would have been CRM. It may have had Teams up there and it had CRM, and then everything else would have been, low down. But now the key applications I want to integrate in is my productivity suite, then my vertical applications, then my analytics solutions, because I want to provide better business decisions to my companies is, I think, pretty interesting in terms of a concept. And therefore, it's driving thoughts around the channel. So as we go to this kind of new world where we, in some ways, have got more complexity, and we've got to simplify that. Have we got the channels who can really help us there? Do we have to change the relationships we have to serve that broader requirement of the customer, to understand how we integrate these things together? Is that a job that the current channel that we have can help us achieve? And what are the commercial models that we need to offer to support that? How can we enable people to do that? And I've talked quite a bit recently at events around my biggest kind of investment question in my mind right now is who provides the skills in this new world and how do we monetize that? So, the core product revenues maybe even in some of the areas maybe diminishing. But we need to offer more skills and capabilities. How do we do that? And we're going to hear part of that answer in the next session, I think, around automation. There's definitely a big drive for automation to bring out some of that value. But when we ask, service providers, 65% of them are now offering vertical solutions. So as the market matures, that if I'm really going to bring an intelligent workplace to my customer, then do I have to understand the context of their vertical well enough to do that? Do I have to really understand that business in enough detail to be able to provide that solution? And obviously there are the challenges around that ARPU I mentioned. The other thing is, with these new technologies, do I break out of my country and do I start to expand internationally is a big question, and a question that I believe a lot of some of the UK businesses here haven't really addressed. Some have, but a lot of people have just decided to stay in their lane, stay in their market. And I think now the opportunity is certainly to broaden out of that. And the other complexity which I was mentioning is really from a product point of view. So these new product areas are really exciting, but they are much more complex to sell. They're much more complex to serve. So how do we enable that in the future? So the kind of key question for us is this differentiation question I talk about a lot, which is, where am I going to drive value in the future out of my business? Is it about being a distribution business, so I can offer a broad product set through a broad distribution arm, but how am I going to support that with services and capabilities and the things that those customers need to bring them together, an intelligent workplace solution for a customer. And I don't want people to go away thinking, an intelligent workplace solution for SMB could be very simple, but you've just got to go into it thinking about where does their data lie, where are the key value they're trying to drive. It doesn't need to be all those platforms integrated together with everything. It could be quite simple, but you've got to think about where the data flows are, where the most valuable integrations are, etc. So, these are some of the areas that we've spoken about before in terms of where we think we can grow. We think are valid strategy choices. So, just people often ask, what are you kind of interested in, Matt? You're you're at Cavell at the forefront of the business, and you can see in what we've been doing, we've been changing to reflect that. You can see those who remember 10 years ago, we were talking just around the hosted VoIP market. Now we've got a CX summit upstairs. We've been focusing on CX. You can see that from the work we do, we're doing a hell of a lot in verticalization right now. You'll hear on the panel later from some guys who are offering critical communication solutions. How are they offering into the blue light market? Doing a lot on that. One of my pet topics, and every year Matt has a pet topic, which is VCons. So if you haven't yet looked at VCon, I'd encourage you to do it. VCon is the idea of virtual conversations. The ITF have now given a standard where we can take data in a common way from multiple applications and dump it into a large database and then start to drive insights and maybe benchmarking and things against that. Now, the big challenge there has been GDPR and things like that. But now we're working with a company called Space and Time who do all the crypto authentication. And they've built solutions against that. And there's a company called Creo Solutions as well who are working on that space. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. We're focused now on security. For my sins, I was product director for UNet, if anybody goes back that far. And I was in charge of the Nokia checkpoint firewalls, if anybody goes back that far. When we're talking about security, we're not talking about that. We're thinking now in a new way about how can you bring security. You'll see more from us in the next 6 to 12 months. How can you bring security services on top of what you do? Some really interesting businesses have started to think through those challenges. Not only how do you secure your core platforms and those sorts of things, that's given. But how do I bring services? There's an appetite from businesses to receive services from you in this space. And our challenge is to work out how to meet that. And we've got Rob from the CPaaS Alliance, who's here. We're very interested in that and the messaging piece. We're doing some work with those guys recently. How does that all come together? And obviously AI and how we drive value-added services. So for those who don't know, 10 years ago we started the VoIP Summit. We now just delivered our first Asia Pac event in Australia, and our friends from Access 4 are here somewhere. I saw them earlier, sponsoring at the back. If you want to find out about the Australian market, these guys know more about that market than anybody. And you can find them. They're the tallest people in the room. They're not all the tallest people. The two of them are tall. But if you want to find out about the Australian market, you'll know what I said. Matt, do you want to stand up for a sec? No? They don't believe you're tall. Go on. There you go. There you go. So if you want to find about the Australian market, have a chat with these guys. They're coming over here as well and working with us, looking at this market. So look them up. We started with the UK SIP trunking and hosted VoIP market studies. We then went into Europe and started doing that. We went then into the US, and then we started covering all these areas. And some of you may not know, and I said, I just want to do one advert, that people will just think of us sometimes about what we're doing from a research point of view and from our standard products, but these are all the areas that we've been covering, and we've been doing literally global research, bespoke research for people. We did a project for Microsoft where we sized pretty much 260 countries globally. 210, okay. 210, there might be a few you want to know in terms of what the opportunity is, so doing a lot in that regard. And we've spent a lot of time also doing consulting and doing a lot of M&A work, as a number of you will know. Some of you sadly sat on the opposite side of a table to me when I'm doing diligence on you. Apologies for the questions. But yeah, so a lot has changed for us in the last 10 years. And I just really wanted to say a big thank you from me personally for your support. It's been a really great journey to be on at Cavell, and with Dom, helping, drive that as well. But you'll hopefully see more and more from us as we expand into those new areas in terms of content, in terms of geography. I think we'll be talking more and just have to think about this intelligent workplace concept. Where does this go? How should we think now about the market? And we'll be talking more about that. And shortly, you will see something new from us, which is we will be rebranding the business in the next few months. So you will see, I don't know if that was an ooh or wow, yeah. It's a, where's Katie? You're fired. We just had a Dom's responsible for it. It's nothing to do with me. If we had a yay, then it would have been all my doing. But yeah, so a few new things you'll see, but the business is evolving and we're trying to evolve with the market, and I really do thank you for your support. So thank you very much.